Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of Two Angles on Angling. This is Jordan with my co-host.
It's Ryan, guys. What's up?
All right. So, I do have some time on the water this week, which is awesome. Uh, some time in nature as well, and a few new observations. Uh, so we'll dive right into it. Actually, well, first, let's back up real quick because since now the podcast is really only available on YouTube,
Right.
all the new episodes and everything, we probably have some different viewers, maybe some new viewers. And if you haven't found out the flow yet, how we go is we start off with our weekly recap, maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes of the first part of the episode. And then, depending on the day, we will go into a deeper topic. Today, we do have one queued up, so we'll go into something a little bit deeper. But other days, when we just fished for 7 days straight or we're just absolutely whooped, it's just a recap and that's it. And you can see the looks on our faces after those days as well. But so yeah, so starting off with my weekly recap. So this I got to give you a little bit of news coming up to explain what why I did some of the things I did this past week. So the Canal Fest is starting next week,
Yep.
and the art show is Saturday and Sunday. So I believe it's 10 to 6 Saturday and 10 to 5 Sunday. I'll be there, booth 289, right next to Tolner Art. So come check out JDO Lure Co. at that event.
Where's the art
JD
show at?
Outdoors Co. now. What's that?
Where is the art? Where is it?
I'm on my booth is going to be right in front of the Riviera Theater, pretty much.
Nice.
So yeah, stoked, looking forward to that. So a lot of my week this week, I haven't been doing a whole lot of art this week. So I've been focused a lot more on the lures, getting jig heads ready, packaged, and then also, I guess I've been working on art to an extent, but no new pieces. I've been gathering some of my older works and stuff, getting them ready to take to the show. So I'll have some the same photo prints I had at uh, the Niagara show. So the one smallmouth, the steelhead. I'll have a smallmouth painting, a steelhead, two smallmouth paintings, and a steelhead painting as well, and some other work. So check that out. I'll have a bunch of cool stuff there. So that's been a lot of this week is just prep work, getting the tent and table set and all that. Thinking everything through, getting the pricing sheets ready for everyone. So that's been exciting and very time consuming, but I'm looking forward to how it goes this year. Last year I worked the Tolner booth and I had some of my stuff, but I didn't have any lures for sale or anything. So now this year, it'll be cool to see how that all unfolds. So as the week, the week was damn hot. There's no way around it. I was working a lot. I did not get outside a whole lot. Just yet again making lures, getting prepped for those things, and working 9 to 5. It kind of feels like I'm back in my winter routine where it's like I'm just going home. It's hot out, like
Yeah.
it's the heat of the day. I don't feel like really being out in it until later in the evening. So, I'm just going in right away and just working on the project. So that's been something, for the rhythm lately. But Saturday, my dad and I we were like, all right, we're definitely getting out fishing no matter what. We'll get up early, get off the water early. So miss a lot of the traffic, the heat, and everything. And it was a well worth it endeavor. We ended up getting up early and did not get out on the water as early as we had planned. We had the rain Saturday morning, so we kind of just waited that out and then got on the water. So uh, getting out past the break walls, and I haven't been on Mother Erie in a while, and I get a little excitable about driving when I'm out there. I'm like,
Yeah.
I can go full bore right now. It's not that bad.
Yeah. Right after that squall passed on Saturday, it was pretty big. I mean, I didn't fish out of Buffalo then, but even where I was fishing out of Hanover, like the cat there, it was the wind spun 180 degrees. That like
Yeah.
at 6 o'clock in the morning, it was coming out of the northwest when that because that storm didn't hit me. Like I didn't. It was raining a little bit when I left home, but by the time I got to the cat, there was no rain. And then when I launched the boat, I was probably got out into the lake like a little after 6, and I could see that storm like hitting
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo. But because we were so far away from it, like we got some really big waves,
Yeah.
which I was excited about. I'm like, oh, this is sweet. So, but it went northwest to north to northeast to east to southeast in a matter of like 2.5 hours. It was
Yeah.
sweet. So
So with that, big waves, and I'm going out full steam ahead, not really thinking. And the issue that we have had in the past, well, it happened again. We took water over the back, the engine shut off, and we're dead in the water for a while. So we're like, all right, well, we may as well fish. Probably a good 45, 50 minutes. And I don't think I marked a damn thing on the graph the whole entire time. And I was like, all right, well, this is absolutely,
hmm.
ass right now. No fish on the graph, and the motor's dead. So I'm like, all right, whatever. I'll re-rig some of the rods, just keep trying and hoping that the motor turns over. So finally did, and I slowly took off to the first spot. And we were trying, we were like gauging the wind and everything, from a standpoint of like, we haven't been out in a while. We know, what depths we caught them in last time, but if we can get in an area where we can go from 35 foot up to 15 or 15 out to 40 or whatever, depending, let's cover a lot of water and see. Well, we ended up riding just due to the wind and everything, a line like pretty much just in like 25 foot of water, and then we moved up to 18 foot of water, and it wasn't really pushing us into transition, but we were just like, all right, boom, we'll just do drift, 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 and keep moving in. So on the final drift, when we were up in like that 18-foot zone, I cast the drop shot out and I got hammered. I'm like, oh, sweet, all right,
Hmm.
let's go. All right, was not a smallmouth. It was not a smallmouth, but it was a hell of a fight from a sheepy right off the
Yeah,
bat, and it was a nice one too.
they thump
Uh,
it.
yeah, so that was awesome, and I was like, sweet, like we got something going at least. Uh, within that same, so like I told my dad, because as soon as I knew it was a sheep head, I was like, all right, please just leave your line in. Like,
Yeah.
there's no need for you to reel in. Like, if it comes off, it comes off, and I know I can net it because at the end of the fight, it's just gonna sit there anyways. So, uh, got that in, and his line's out, and he's taking the photos of the sheep's head. I throw it back, and then he hooks up, and he's like, I don't know, I think it's off, and he just is reeling in, and he ended up catching a rock bass. Uh, and then yeah, and then on the very next, so this was all within like 10 minutes,
How
so
big
like
was
the
the
same
rock
drift,
bass?
like just a little, little guy, but
No,
it
that's not a
was
little rocky. That's a
yeah,
solid
yeah, I guess
rocky.
that is a sizable one. You're right.
Okay.
You're right. You're right. So, anyways, it was cool, and I'm like, all right. So that's the second time this year that he has caught a rock bass on Lake Erie, and I have yet to make contact
No,
with
fish
one out
those
on Lake
walls in the
Erie.
harbor, man.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
they're loaded in there,
yeah.
especially
Good
at
point.
nighttime,
Yeah,
dude. They're
good
loaded
point.
in there. You pull harnesses through there at night
Yeah.
for walleyes, you'll catch
Mm.
rock bass for
Yeah,
sure.
and that's a cool little fish, dude. Like I don't
People
care
eat
what
them, dude.
anyone
I
says.
mean, there's
Like they're
guys.
badass looking. Like they're like a smallmouth meets a
Yeah,
sunfish. Like they're
man. I mean,
badass.
look,
Like
there's guys who butterfly like scale them and butterfly them
mm,
and just eat them like a
yeah.
peacock, like how we eat
Okay.
peacocks in the Amazon. And they
Gotcha.
love them. They say
Yeah.
they're awesome. I've never tried them,
I mean,
but
I've caught some nice sized ones in the canal, like some rock bass. Like
yeah.
they get big. Anyways, so then on that very same drift, same line, like after I caught the sheephead, I cast out. My dad caught that, blah blah, and then I ended up. Or sorry, let's spin this around. I apologize. My dad actually caught the first smallmouth because he ended up hooking up after that rock bass, caught the smallmouth, and I was like, all right, sweet. We did one more run, I think. He caught one more smallmouth, and then I was like, all right, the boat's working now. The water calmed down a bit. Like if now's the time to move, if there was a time to move, it's now. We know that the fish are here. If it sucks elsewhere, we can always come back and just see. So we left, ran to the next spot, and just based on where the wind was coming and everything, I was like, all right, on this specific spot, I know that we can get pushed through a whole variety of depths. So let's get on that line and run it. Well, we did a very quick drift, 3 casts, almost. All right, moved, 3 casts, almost, moved, three. And I'm like, all right, we got to completely ditch this zone right now. I'm not dealing with this. There might be a fish or two that we could catch, but I'm not, it's not worth it. So we moved and got out to a different section, and I was like, all right, let's head out even deeper than we have been and just start drifting it in. So we were in like that 37 foot, and we're drifting it in, and I'm looking over at my dad's line, and I can see that he like kind of pulled up on it, but I didn't know if he had weeds or what exactly. And then I see him start reeling, and I'm like, and then I see his line just start going straight, 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 and I'm like, and nothing jumped, and I'm like, okay. So he's fighting it, and it's getting closer to the boat, and then I start hearing the zzz, zzz, and I'm like, all right, he's got a sheep head on. I'm like, all right, whatever, we'll get it in, unhook it, it's fine, it's action, it's something. So it starts getting closer to the boat, and then it starts like digging down under the boat and changing directions quick. And I'm like, okay, well, that's definitely not a sheephead. Like a sheephead, like by this point, it probably is just going to come up or something. So I see the fish. I'm like, holy shit, that is a smallmouth. So he gets it up on this one pole. I net it, and I'm like, holy shit, and I'm losing it. I haven't caught a small, like, we haven't had a smallmouth this big in the boat, I don't think, yet this year. So, or maybe one. I don't know. Doesn't matter. I'm going to lose it every time on a 5+ pound smallmouth. So we ended up weighing in. It was over 5.5. And one of my, I think it's the third biggest smallmouth now my dad has ever caught. It was beautiful, just dark colors, just uh, on the one eye was blind, so it was all like milked over, and then on his other side it had like this scratch on it. It was just like this old warrior beat
Yeah.
up. Like it was awesome. So weighed it, got some great some photos, and swam off like a champ. So that was awesome. And then from there, I ended up my dad. He was like, I'm only going to throw the drop shot. And I was like, wow, okay. Like, he's always the Ned rig. Like, if anyone's listened to this long enough, my dad is the wacky rig, Ned rig. Like, those are his go tos. He says that he hates the drop shot all the time. And he today or yesterday was like, I'm only fishing it. And he did well, and he caught fish. That big one was on the drop shot. And then he ended up catching another one shortly after that was around 4. I dropped one on the tube, and then he dropped one on the drop shot. I caught one that was 4 3/4 or so on the tube, which was my only smallmouth of the day. Whatever. I caught 2 big sheepheads, so I'll take that. Um, and then my dad ended up catching another nice smallmouth, or I don't remember the size of it, but he caught another smallmouth regardless. So ended up the day not too bad. That big one was definitely well worth it.
Nice.
Uh, and I don't know, we were only on the water for like 4 or 5 hours, and then we got off a little around noon, and uh, there was something else I wanted to mention about that day of. Oh, well, we were talking about the bugs earlier, like all the husks on the water and
Yeah.
even the mayflies and everything. And my dad asked about that, and he was like, what is all this crap? And I was like, well, that's like the bugs and the husks and everything from them, uh, coming up, dying off and all that, and shedding the husks. And uh, so he was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. And I was telling him how you said last week on the podcast about the walleye stomachs just being filled with them. And it's like, you think about how much is on the surface right here, how much is going on as they're rising, how
Yeah.
much is in the sky that then
Makes me
falls
wonder if
back
the
down.
bass
It's
eat
like,
them. But
yeah,
I mean, the bass, like, when they first start fighting, they throw up a lot. I mean, and if you fish bass a lot in your life, you've seen them throw up
they
next to the boat
yeah,
too.
they were throwing
Like,
up
so you got to
yesterday.
think like they're vomiting the entire fight. By the time they get to you, they're, who knows,
Yeah,
what's left over. So I'd be curious if bass are eating them.
yeah,
But I haven't, like, I boated some bass today, but it was in fast current and or waves, and I couldn't see the fish, at
yeah,
a depth to even judge. But they didn't throw anything up like close enough to
yeah.
the boat for me to notice. But
But yeah, that was a cool day. Well worth getting out there. And for whatever reason, I did fish the drop shot, and it just was not. I was watching my dad, trying to see what he was doing differently than and just I don't know what exactly it was, but I could not pick up on that subtlety.
dude, you know what like this time of year I've been fishing. So I think I talked about this because this is relevant to your drop shot thing. I think I talked about this maybe last winter, but I'll bring it up again. That I had this client one day, like normally when I fish live bait, use a 3-way swivel, like a dropper about the size of my fist to my elbow, and then, a 2.5 to 3 foot leader. I just go like this with the spool. All right, like this. That's the ratio. Long leader to a hook, short dropper about half the length of the leader, or more than, or less, even less than half of that to a weight. And when you drift, it creates a natural presentation, especially with a crayfish. It keeps it close to the bottom and it takes off the rocks, right? But the problem with that is, if you're not careful, you can, and you're making just, you need to like make barely amount of bottom contact. You want to keep that crayfish just off the bottom, because otherwise that thing will sink too close to the bottom to get caught. It'll get
Mm-hmm.
snagged. You'll drop baits not knowing it, whatever. And so I had one client one day. It was fairly big out there, and he kept making way too much bottom contact. Like he couldn't feel it. And he's old, and that's a whole other story. But I kept thinking through this, and I'm like, all right, I just reversed the ratio. I put a very small leader to a hook and a long dropper, just like a drop shot.
Okay.
But the dropper, though, but the drop from the 3-way
Mm-hmm.
swivel to the weight is about 2.5 to 3 feet long,
Gotcha.
right? So it's like this.
Yeah.
So when we're drifting, this is collapsing to probably about here, and the bait is hovering here.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
probably 2 feet off the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally unnatural presentation for a crayfish, right?
Mm-hmm.
It gets annihilated. It gets absolutely annihilated, dude. Like
Huh.
there's no, and the other, because one, I just, bass are dumb and drum are dumb, and they're like, when the water's as warm as it is, they need to eat, dude. Like their metabolism's raging. That's why with the fish that you catch this time of year, pretty much until late August, are beat up because they just got the shit beat out of them, pre-spawn, people catching them. Then they had, a rough spawn where they fast for a bunch of weeks, and their immune system, is
Yeah.
they're at their weakest point after that spawn, so they're vulnerable to sickness. They're vulnerable to infections. So they just look generally beat this time of year. You can catch some good looking ones, don't get me wrong, but that's the general trend. They get like back to being like really solid, I think, fighting weight clean towards the end of August, and then they just get more and more beautiful, as the water gets colder.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about them this time of year is their metabolism's raging, so they don't care, dude. Like they're gonna eat, and they're gonna eat all day, and they're hanging out with drum though, so it makes it tough to keep them off the hook. Because I've tried everything,
Mm-hmm.
but reverse the ratio.
Yeah.
Like it makes sense that he was catching fish with a drop shot, because the eat's great too. Like it's basically hovering right at the eye level of the fish,
Mm-hmm.
so that fish is gonna see it no matter
Yeah. Yeah.
what.
Yeah.
And I'm using stuff that's alive, but I mean you could put just a crayfish with a
Yeah.
crazy action on a 3-way swivel or with a
Mm-hmm.
drop shot setup and just drag it.
For sure.
You
So
know,
I remember the other two notes I was gonna make. So besides that big one that had the eye and the scar, the other ones were all like pristine looking. They were just beautiful, like clean,
yeah.
no hook holes in their mouths and stuff. So that was awesome to see. And then I somehow in the story I believe I skipped that I caught a second drum, a sheep's head at some point. Um, my respect for those things has grown drastically in the last year. Like just looking at them and the fight that they have, like they're really like they're pretty awesome fish. Like people dog on them and they hate on them, but
Yeah, I
like
mean,
look at their colors and like how big their scales are compared to like a lot of our other species around here, and just add it all up, like the
dude, I
fight that
mean,
they
look,
have. It's
it's people can say whatever they want. People are
Hey,
going to be
here we goes the Tolner sheepy right there.
the
So
people are
yeah.
going to be beholden to whatever mindset they are. But I mean, I've caught black drum, I've caught giant redfish, and our freshwater drum is the same creature, just much smaller, adapted for this ecosystem. And I mean, in some places they're not much smaller. Some places they're close to the same size. But our freshwater drum, dude, like, so when I troll for walleyes, if on calm days, I'll always run planer boards up, and at least two of those will only be 10 feet under the surface. I'll just keep them up really high because you'll have walleyes suspended, and they're always looking up, and some of them will be in the high part of the water column feeding on bait, and you'd be surprised how high up they'll come and blast something. And dude, so 10 feet below the surface in like 60, 70 feet of water, and drum every once in a while, sometimes once a day, we'll eat it. So they're like, there's like that fish occupies the entire water column. And smallmouth, I think smallmouth do too in ways that we just don't see all that often. Like I've never caught a smallmouth out in open water, suspended like that. Like I've caught all the smallmouth that I've ever really caught have been on the bottom. But I have no doubt that the smallmouth come up and hang out in those
Hmm.
schools of bait too. They just, for some reason, never really eat a worm harness. But the drum will, and they live there all the way down to the bottom. They can eat smelt, they can eat gobies, they can eat emerald shiners, they can eat zebra mussels. They have endless forage. So they're super powerful. They're prolific. Like they're a creature that is super well adapted to the environment. They're native, and they if they're around, they're gonna crush things.
Yeah,
You know, and
for sure.
so to hate on them is like I get it, dude. Like when I'm fishing walleyes and I start like as long as I have a consistent walleye bite,
Hmm.
I don't mind
Yeah,
catching
yeah.
a big drum, in the mix. But the problem with catching them while you're trolling for walleyes or bottom bouncing for walleyes is those things like destroy worm harnesses, man. Like because they just blast them and they do all kind. Their mouths are different. The hooks don't come out as easy, and
Yeah,
they just trash your
yeah.
baits,
Good
and
point. Yeah, more of
ultimately
an
they're taking bait.
annoyance. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. So moving beyond, for the rest of my little recap and everything. So today's Sunday, so we're recording Sunday. It's whatever 3, 4 o'clock right now. Uh,
Three,
what's that?
three.
3. Okay. So yesterday I went for a hike after so we got off the water, did my stuff for a while, and then went out on a hike in the evening, Amherst State Park, and never been there before, and Ellicott Creek's running through it, and I'm like, oh wow, okay.
Hmm.
So I'm putting all this together, and I'm like, looking at the water, I'm like, okay, well, there's definitely fish living in here. Like this would be a cool place to fish. So hiking along, then as I'm going back, I'm standing by the water, well, in the water, and I see this guy walking down fishing, and I'm like, oh, okay. So he comes up a little closer, and I'm like, hey, like, are you catching anything? Like he's like, oh, I just got here, and I'm like, oh, okay. And I was like, well, what are you normally catching in here? And obviously, he has no idea if I've ever fished a day in my life or anything,
Yeah.
And he like explained it absolutely perfectly. He was like, "Well, this it runs to Lake Erie, so anything that could be in there could be in here." So, and he went through all the species like northern pike and largemouth and smallmouth and trout and all of this, and I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome, dude. Well, best of luck and whatever." So, I was like,
He's caught trout up there.
"Yeah,
Yeah, good for him. That's Ellicott
um,
Creek. You said it was
yeah,
on. Yeah.
yeah," and I'm like, "Okay, well." And the spot where I entered the water too, like I'm looking and I'm like, holy shit, that's like a deep hole. Like the rest of it was very shallow, and then I'm like, okay, so like in this,
Hey, I'm
it was
trying
a
to picture
sharp bend. There
where
was a
that
deep
park is.
hole.
So that
There's like a
park's.
nursing home type thing.
How did you access it off of Niagara Falls Boulevard?
No, I
Anyway,
can't. Yeah, I'll show you on the map afterwards. But
is it like a huge area with lots of pavilions and totally grassy? Because
no, there was a lot of woods in it. It was running through. There was Ellicott Creek there, like I said, and there was like trails that were running through that
is
were more
Ellicott
like
Creek Road right next to it on the other side of it?
no.
So, okay, then
Yeah,
I
I'll have to
definitely don't.
explain to you where
Then
the
you're
access.
way upstream of
Yeah.
where I thought you were. Okay.
Um. So Okay, so that interaction and that was cool. So, anyways, and I'm like, all right, well, this looks, I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, well, this looks like any other water system that I would want to fish, anyways. Like I'm, deep bend pool and like all that. I'm like, so that's something I want to put on the agenda, anyways, to go fish. I think that's kind of it for my observations.
So you're close to UB.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Um. So no.
It's definitely northerns up there. Definitely
Yeah.
largemouth.
I could like it looked like good
When I had
northern.
my my TOA skiff, when I first moved up here, I had a skiff and
Okay.
that had an outboard jet on it and a poling platform, and I used to use it to pole around the like I was definitely not good at it, but
Yeah.
I got a pole and I would pole around the flats around Camp Lejeune and like cast to
Hmm.
redfish in the
That's
tidal
cool.
flats. And so I brought that boat back here with me, thinking that because there was a rowing frame that you could drop into it, and you could sit on a
Hmm.
Yeti, like just have a cooler in the
Yeah.
middle, sit like a padded cooler,
Yeah.
and then row like a drift boat. So I had paddles, and I had freaking or I had oars, and I had
A push pole.
in the frame, and I had the cooler. So, but I used to take that thing onto Ellicott Creek and just blaze up there because there's no prop on it.
Yeah.
It's a jet outboard, so I would just blaze through all that
That's
stuff.
awesome.
And my buddy Nate
That's
and I,
awesome.
went up there, but we caught northern pike. We caught
Huh.
some really nice largemouth in certain places.
Hmm.
And there's no doubt steelhead go up
Yeah.
there. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure there's walleyes up in there too.
Hmm.
But it's prime environment for northern pike and
Yeah.
largemouth. You know,
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah. That was a cool. Yeah. So that was a cool interaction, and yeah, it gave me another little bit of a sliver of perspective on like our local fisheries and everything, and the
Yeah.
opportunity. And that's been a huge thing for me this last year is exploring around and seeing all these things. So yeah, that's definitely on the register for a place to fish, but. Yeah, deer. The antlers are starting to come in a little stronger. If you've seen any lately, like they're obviously in velvet, but there's a little more growth there. They're like that reddish brown,
Yeah.
complete summer coat right now. Bird activity's been pretty low too, just because it's
The
hot
heat.
as hell. Yeah, 90 degrees and stuff, so just not a whole lot of activity. Maybe some squirrels and stuff if you're in like a nice shady zone, but yeah, and along with that, I feel like it's kind of that time for us to chill out as well. Not everything else is calming down. It's probably a good time for us for it to an extent as well. But yeah, so what's your week
Well,
ahead?
I'll just take the baton on the bird front. There's the when Liam was here, so I had Monday off, and Liam Kennedy Auto Care. I was over here cleaning my boat, making her look like new, like he always does. But he forgot his earbuds, and I came home. I was just running errands, went to the gym or whatever, and came back, and it was hot. And when I got home, I could hear. So there's a Cooper's hawk that has a nest like diagonally from here, right?
Okay.
And they definitely have chicks. I don't know how many. I've seen at least one fly around, but I mean they're now like learning to fly, but they're still close to home. And so the the next biggest tree for that bird to land on are like right behind my house. There's two of them. And so they would fly from the nest tree over to that tree. And when the robins would see this, the multiple robins would get on the telephone wires out there and just consistently chirp, 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 for hours, dude.
Wow.
Like back and forth, constant. And then every like 5-10 minutes, that juvenile would like let out a call, and one of its parents would let out a call. And it's dude, this went on for hours, bro.
Wow.
Like well, I didn't know this. Like I came home, heard it, and I was like, man, they're still talking shit, aren't they? Because when I left, they were like that, and I explained to him like what was happening. And
That's
yeah, they went
awesome.
on for like sun up to sundown, man. They
Wow.
were just yelling at each other for multiple days. That seems to have chilled out now.
Wow.
But there was that whole drama, and because the robins are just warning, and then
Uh,
a murder of crows came through at one point, and like went to town, and they were just totally trying to gang up on one of the chicks, and they didn't kill it or anything. They stayed away from it pretty good, but they were here
Yeah,
harassing for
yeah.
like a solid 45 minutes. So all that went down. But yeah, on the fishing front, not much has changed from last week. Like I fished walleyes almost every day except for today. I just had the Monday off and I fished the other 6 days. And mainly fished walleyes out of Buffalo. It's just got Buffalo's gotten to the point where there's still tons of fish there. You could still catch tons of them. It's just gotten to the point where it's crowded. There's a lot of people lacking etiquette out there that are just
Oh yeah, that's the other thing I was gonna mention too is the
yeah.
the
I mean,
the
do
boater
we? You know,
etiquette. Yeah,
I always want to preach about this, and maybe people will listen. But like,
yeah,
look, man, I'll just put this out there from an
yeah.
etiquette perspective when it comes to fishing walleyes, and you can question my etiquette all you want, but I'm just telling you as a charter captain who's been doing this for a while, what I believe the etiquette to be, and the rest of my community believes the etiquette to be. If there is wind, then you troll in the direction either with the wind or against the wind. Now, I can have a long debate with you about whether it's worthwhile to troll into the wind at all, in what situations might warrant it. But I can't think of a current situation in front of Buffalo where it would be worthwhile to troll into the wind at all. You should go way out, battle waves going out there, and then turn around and ride the waves all the way back in until you get your limit. And you will. Like, you totally will. But there's dudes that are just going out there and look, man, people are social creatures. I used to call them sheeple, and now I've come off that and just like, look, because that's what makes us humans is the social aspect that you can't live by yourself. But one of the downfalls of that though is you will so some guy, let's say it's super early in the morning and there's a guy who sets up in one area, and then another guy's coming out. He hasn't been out in a while, doesn't really know where to go. He's trolling social media trying to figure it out. He heads out, he's got a waypoint, he thinks he knows where he's going to go, but then he sees that guy. He's like, well, shit, if that guy's there, he's probably been out here every day, so I'm just going to start fishing kind of near him. And then you have a couple more guys come out with the same mindset. Next thing you know, they set up near those guys. And then there's guys who have been catching fish in that area. Now it starts to expand into a blob, and then that blob, it's tightest near its center, but eventually starts to like thin out the
Yeah.
further away you get from it. Um, and I've done my best to try to avoid the center, but even on like I've had guys completely cut me off and then get pissed off at me because their spread ended up right in front of my boat, even though I tried, turning for a long, like a half an hour out, started trying to turn away and got no response. Like, if you got to pay attention to what the direction of the other boats, and give way. The courtesy is so look. If you just got to troll through if you look, this is what people will say. Well, sometimes I got to turn. I don't want to take in my entire spread. Guess what, dude? If there's tons of boats out there, take it. The proper etiquette is to take in your spread. The proper etiquette is not, this is my world and it's inconvenient for me to take my lines out of the water because I'm too lazy to do it. I just no which you don't turn through groups of people. Why risk that? I don't
Yeah.
even know why you would do it. There's hundreds of thousands of walleyes out there. Like, you're not going to have a problem catching them. So why would that be a thing? Why would you turn in front of anybody? Why would you go against the flow of the
Yeah.
waves? Like, there's so many cons to going through waves. It's very difficult to control your speed, your spread. You're getting knocked around. Going into waves is the same thing. If you're pulling boards, you're going straight into chop. Your lines getting ripped through the water constantly. Your bows coming up and down. Like, you just lack boat control. But hey, I mean, if you want to pull stick baits directly into the wind, go for it, man. It's just a rough ride. Why do it? But if that's what you want to do, go for it. You're not fucking us up by coming against the flow of, like, as long as if we're going one way and you're
Yeah.
going the other, that's cool. But if you look around and all the boats, 99% of the boats are going to be going with the waves. People, especially people that know what they're doing, are going to be going with the waves. And if you just decide to not go with the waves and go through them, you're going to screw a bunch of people up, not just one.
I mean, this is the same exact as our bass discussion we have constantly of like, like if the wind's pushing, you take the flow and
Yeah,
go.
the,
The
the, the
river,
biggest
like,
difference though is tackles involved, because
true,
like
yeah, yeah,
tackle potential,
yeah,
because
true.
if somebody cuts in front of me, so let's say that, you know, and this works from whatever angle. If there's a boat over here and I'm way over here, I see this guy at like 20 minutes out, because I get as far away from people as I can within reason, and I start trolling back. Hopefully, by the time I get to the mass of people, I have my limit. That's my main hope, and it's happened every single time I've done this. There's that many fish out there, but people just they when they get out there, they see the herd and they're like, well, there's got to be fish there, so I'm not going to go too far from there because I don't know if there's fish going to be over there. Guess what, people? They definitely are. They definitely are. I've gone to new places every single day and ran the same spread and done the same things and just caught the shit out of them, getting, like 3-man limits, 4-man limits in an hour and a half to 4 hours. Like, and I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that there's that many fish out there. Like, you don't need to get into the crowd. You can totally spread out. People know this when they fish out of Dunkirk. People know this when they fish out of Barcelona. People know this when they fish out of the Cat. But for some reason, Buffalo just has to herd up. And, like that's getting annoying. And I don't know how many people will listen to this and pass that along, but it's why I'm pretty much done fishing out of Buffalo. I might, one more time, but it's just dealing with that is a problem. It's getting to the point now where I'm running almost all the way to Sturgeon Point, which is about 15 miles from the city, just to get away from the crowd so I can turn around. Well, at that point, I might as well not burn the gas in my boat and burn it in my
Yeah.
truck and launch from the Cat. Um, and just do what I keep talking about, because there people know everybody spreads out. There's no clusters of people there, except for during tournament times. But we can all get along and do things super efficiently if you just follow the flow. And people think, well, who are you, man? You're not the boss. It's like, look, yeah, that's why like laws, regulations, customs, courtesies, etiquette. That's why these phenomenon occur, is because when you get to huge numbers of people, we have to figure out ways to like little small sacrifices so we can all get along. We all have to bend in a little way to. It's not just your world. Like it feels like, especially since the pandemic, and this will be the end of this rant, but especially since the pandemic, people have lost a sense of the other humans that are around them in the actual real environment. They've just completely lost sense of things. They have their own bubble and they just operate in that bubble without taking into consideration everything else. It's either that or, and I don't know which is worse. It's either that or they do see everything that's going on and say, nah, like this is what I'm doing, and screw him, he can turn. And it's like, yeah, well,
Yeah,
that's why people get into fights. That's
legit,
why
dude.
that's why dramas unfold, is because you're not bending. Like, again, I see you coming from out here. So as soon as I see you coming from out here, I start turning in this direction. And I'm watching you because now I'm becoming broadside to you. You can, over here, you might not get a great look at me, especially if you're looking back at your spread or whatever. But if I come broadside to you now, as you're coming across, now you can like totally see me. You have
Yeah.
no excuse, right? So the first thing that you should do when you see me doing this is turn this way. And that way, if you keep angling here and I keep angling away, we'll never meet each other. And you will get to the point where you end up way out here, and I could just come back here, and I will never end up through your spread, but we'll never get caught. But that takes two people doing that. I can't do that by myself, because basically, if I do that by myself, you forced me to do exactly what you're doing, which is sucking. Like trolling through sideways through the
Yeah.
waves. I get so pissed because it's happened so many times to me this week, where the past couple of weeks, where I've just like, dude, I'm trying, I'm really trying, man, but like you're not giving me anything. You've not given anything. And to me, that's either you have zero situational awareness
Yeah.
or you're just like, screw this guy. And my perspective is, number one, no, dude, like I'm doing what professionals do because I do this every single day. Like I'm going with the waves, best presentation. You aren't. And if you look around you, 99% of the boats are doing what I'm doing and you're not. And you think you're right, that's just crazy. Like it's just crazy. So that's my take. Walleye fishing has been awesome. I did I mean, it's crazy. Like there's, I mean, like lots of big fish, all fish of all sizes. Like I'm not saying this isn't because I'm good at what I do. It's there's just ridiculous numbers of fish out there, and everybody with a boat that's been going out there and targeting walleyes has been getting their limits, no problem at all. It's never been this good over here. I have no idea why. This is just there's a monstrous school from probably Erie, Pennsylvania, all the way to Buffalo, and I don't care where you go, you will find them. And you got to. I mean, I've caught them as shallow as the mid 40s, and to as deep as the 70s.
Mm.
They're just you can go like that's what I'm saying. Like I have intentionally tried to end up places where fish weren't, and they were always there. Like everywhere that I went, man. Like I would so I have I always keep my trails on,
Yeah.
right? And usually I keep just 3 days worth of trails and then just in purge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I had this objective where I drew an imaginary line from a far waypoint, kind of by Sturgeon, to Point Avenue, like inside the internet. Like if you get out near Sturgeon, you look towards Point Avenue, and then you have the international border in between. I just called that a second waypoint. So that whole zone from Sturgeon back to Buffalo, I wanted to color in with trails. So every day I would just do different laps depending on what the winds was doing, just to try to
Yeah.
fill in
Yeah.
the canvas every single day. I had the same
Huh.
results. So I'm saying this to tell people that don't get anxious when you go out. Just literally pick a spot. As long as like it is going to be reliably good if you're deeper than 50 feet of water. Reliably. Anything shallower than that, I don't know. But reliably good in 50 to 55 feet of water, and you can go anything deeper than that, and they'll be there. But for sure, if you're in that mid 50 zone, you're going to be in great shape. Um, and that's it. Like just pick a random spot where there's nobody else, and experiment and have fun. Because it's never going to be, well, not, I'm not going to say never, but this is like a once in a lifetime event. Like I have lots of clients who have lived here their whole lives and have fished walleyes their whole lives, and they've never seen this. So it's been great. But like you said earlier, dude, it's been super hot.
Yeah.
I've been starting, my days at 5:30, which I have a lot of like 3 o'clock wake ups. I'm fishing out of Cattaraugus there. It's like a 50-minute drive from here, so I got to wake up at 3 to get there at 5:30. Make breakfast and all that
Yeah.
stuff, and just get myself ready to go. So that's been the toughest part of it. But the nice thing about starting that early is you're off the water, no later than like 10 or 11. By that point, it hasn't gotten hot yet, and you're okay.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. For sure.
so
All right. Well, as is that
yeah,
your
that's it on the
recap?
fishing,
All
man.
right. Well, as for the getting deeper side of things, it's probably not going to be a super long conversation, but it was an interesting point I thought nonetheless. But
Yep.
that was originality, and I put it in this way, but it doesn't have to be phrased this way, I guess. But originality versus influence, or like does that make sense? Like how much? Um, I guess also I was looking at it from an artist side of things, but like I was listening to music at the moment, and I'm like, okay, and I had a good conversation with my coworker before this about music of like, well, how many people now are writing their songs and all of that versus having someone else write it, and so kind of led me down a few rabbit holes of like, okay, well, how is that even originality if you're just covering someone else's song? No, like you might have your own spin on it, I suppose, but like you didn't completely create it. And then even at that, how
I'm,
many,
I'm listening. I want to
yeah,
look something up. Keep going.
how many musicians, probably all the musicians that we listen to have been influenced by the former, the musicians that came before them or artists, so on and so forth. So I don't know. That was just an interesting uh, dichotomy, I suppose, to look at is like, the originality
Yeah.
versus, influence. Yeah, hit me with it.
All right. So here's the thing. So if we're gonna have any discussion about words
Yep.
or that involve concepts, I think it's important that we at least kick off with mutually defined terms, right? And so influenced is like seems obvious to me. It's like you've either heard something, saw something, smelled something,
Yeah.
tasted something, met somebody, whatever, and they've had an impact on the way that you think, and you recognize but I think the important function in there is that you recognize
Mm.
that that you learned or took something from that experience, and you're applying that towards a current endeavor. That conscious recognition is what I think is important for influence. I don't think there's such a thing as originality. I'll read to you what
Okay.
the definition is, but I think that it's super squishy. Um, as a noun, the ability to think independently and creatively, which now we have to define independently and creatively,
Mm.
or the quality of being novel or unusual. Um, I think
Mm.
originality is something that some people feel like it's important to bestow upon themselves or
Mm.
somebody else. I just don't see any value in the term.
Yeah.
You
We,
know,
we are,
because I think we are all 100% influenced.
yeah, of
I'm
course, by everything we're exposed to.
right,
Yeah.
just from the when we came out our womb, we're influenced by our parents,
Yeah.
and this we could get into a crazier discussion about whether or not free will exists, but it's along the same lines
Yeah.
though. Where so I don't I don't really think that there's very much original that occurs. I think that like everything is influence. I think that's just who we are as creatures. Now, if you were to um, maybe under extreme duress, I think that the only way originality can exist is if and I don't even know what the right word of this is, but let's say that there's many other dimensions that we aren't physically able to take in, right? So where I'm going with this is like, so I was thinking about this the other day that like, fish and houseflies, for example, they see the world totally different from us, right? Like they see things totally different. The way
Yeah.
that they actually perceive reality, that just their lenses,
Yeah.
everything is totally different, which spins around in their brain different ways. So their perception of reality is very different from ours, right? Do they have the ability to tap into dimensions if there are such things as multiple dimensions, right? Like, because the
Yeah.
only way that originality could occur, in my opinion, is if you were somehow isolated and you tapped into a dimension that you have not been physically capable of tapping into before, and a thought was basically
Uh,
you piped into something like the Matrix, but not like the Matrix, I guess. Like you became open to accepting different stimuli.
yes, and it
Um,
would be something of which you've never received or
right.
seen before, so it
What
would
some people
be,
say happens on psychedelics.
yeah.
Like DMT, voyages and shit like that. That's where I think that in order for me to believe in originality, it would take that extreme definition
Hmm.
of it for me to buy into the
Yeah.
concept where you're piping into something that in your ordinary everyday conscious or like walking around this planet you're not normally tapped into. um,
So what word would we use then maybe to describe like the, so if we're not going to use originality, uh difficult to try and describe a word with other words.
As long as they're not complicated, you can
Yeah,
use as
yeah.
many words as you
All
want.
right.
When you start dropping big words to
Yeah,
describe words the same length as them, things get
yeah.
weird.
So the innovators
Right?
of things, of music, like of pop and we've talked about that, and then obviously architecture. Like there's all these hundreds of different routes that you could go down with that. But what would be the word then for that? Because it is new. There hasn't really been anything like it, but it is still influenced by rock and roll's influenced by jazz and
Right.
blues, and
No,
it's
and I can't even speak super educatedly about this, but I think I can at least tap dance my way around it. If you think about Jimi Hendrix, right? So, like, because he was obviously, openly consumed many psychedelic drugs, amongst other things. Dude would pipe into a different dimension and play some just completely magical, crazy shit, and blew like all-star guitar players away with what he was capable of doing. However, he started off playing just like anybody else would play. Like it took him developing all the basic skill sets. So he wasn't an original. It's not like he created a new instrument.
mm,
He just figured out a way to make it sound different.
yeah,
And could create a completely different sound, rhythm, cadence that anybody had ever created before. But he still had the same tool. He didn't invent the tool. The guy who uh, invented the guitar, let's say, and I don't. And this the thing is like we have no way of actually knowing what the real history
yeah,
is there.
yeah,
There's people that have hypotheses there, I'm sure, but like I'm saying, at some point, some aberrant like hunter gatherer version of a human or early hominid maybe um, had a tendon or a sinew of an animal, and somehow it was tight, maybe between two rocks or whatever, and maybe they kicked it or flicked it accidentally, and it like let out this vibration, and they thought, oh, that was pretty cool, and then they started doing it over and over again. They geeked out to the sound, and then eventually they got better and better, just like all humans do, and hominids in general do, is they get better and better at fashioning that tool, and next thing you know, you have a thing like a guitar, and then you have people that get then people being people get better and better and better at playing that thing. So, was there like an originator for the guitar? Yeah, the accidental trip over a tendon that created a sound. Like that's where I would have to go.
all I'll say is I'm more willing to bet that it was tied between two trees
Whatever.
than
Yeah,
between
that's
two
totally
rocks,
it's
but
totally possible. But I mean, that's how far back we have to
yeah,
go
for
in my
sure.
in my mind,
Yeah,
because I don't like.
yeah.
Look, I think um, when a phenomenon like Jimi Hendrix emerges, I think it's awesome to watch and behold. I think it's beautiful when things like that happen. But I don't. Other than those adjectives, it doesn't elicit
Yeah.
something else in me where because I think we're I don't know, man.
We
I,
just like labeling things too.
well, because there's the urge to label is rooted in ego. Like
Mm.
you want because you're trying to compare yourself to that thing,
Mm.
so you have to put a
Yeah, because
name
if you
to
have
it.
no
Right.
name, there's no
My whole
comparison.
thing is
Yeah,
just like take it all in and
yeah.
like just experience it. And there's no reason to form comparisons or even put the labels out there. Just be part
Is
of
it
the experience.
is that not also kind of a form of materialism too? Because you're holding on to that like definition. So you're holding on to something versus
Right.
no holding on to it. You're kind of just it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I mean that's where I go with that type of topic. Like
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's things that I'm fairly steadfast on, but I mean nothing's popping to the top of my head. But I mean, like even my own personal um, between my own personal grooming standards, my diet, my fitness, the truck that I drive, the boat that I operate, the gear that my clients use, like all of those things. are part of like one reflection of what I believe to be, you know, a high standard.
Mm.
And it's not based off. It's loosely based off of, okay, this I've fished with dozens and dozens and dozens of guides in my life, and I see many dozens more here operating every day, and not many dozens, but dozens
Mm-hmm.
more operating here every day. So I have this huge canvas of experience in my head of like what's good and what's bad, but I can't draw to a single one of those things and say that this had one impact on me versus another. They're
Mm.
all just feeding into the way that, like, I guess my standards and the way that I think I should be carrying myself and operating. Um, I don't think my personality changes or has changed at all since I've started doing this. And people that knew me back in my Marine Corps days, if they watched this podcast, I think they would tell you the same thing. But it's like trucks clean, boats clean. Other than you see me after a day of fishing and I'm disheveled, but I go out there clean at least. Stay in shape and be as entertaining and show people as awesome experience as possible. Okay, then that's about. I'm not striving for originality. I'm just striving to like being original, or even knowing whether I am original is not meaningful to me at all.
Mm.
And I don't think it should be meaningful for anybody. I don't think you should care.
Yeah.
I think you should kind of. I mean, I'm not saying that you should live like me, but you should look for an objective of how you want to live and go for that.
Your own standards.
Right.
Yeah, own set of
And there's
standards.
nothing wrong with lead. Like, you should always be a sponge. Like, I don't feel like super deep rooted in a bunch of different things and a bunch of things other than my love and protection for my family and my friends. But that's it. Like that's unwavering. But everything else, I'm open to having discussions about. There's things that I'll have strong opinions about, and I'm be 100% down to debate about. But the idea of, because I would be happy to be influenced by other people, to have those kinds of discussions. If I thought that it was a flaw or would take away from, like my novelty or my specialness or who Ryan Shea was, it's like, yeah, whatever. Then just go be lonely somewhere, man. Like,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I don't know what to tell
Fair
you,
point there. Wow.
but
All right, dang. Yeah, that was a
but
good
what
take on that.
but what how did that pop into your head though? Like,
Well,
what?
like I said, I was originally, so I was talking to my new coworker at the juicery today, and he's 27. His name's Nick, so a year older than me. And instantly, I'm like, "What kind of music do you listen to?" And we started talking. He's like more into the heavy metal stuff, and so I'm like, "All right." And I'm kind of telling him, I'm more rock and all of that. So, as I'm going through, we're talking throughout the day. We were having super deep philosophical conversations, and we even brought up like how you mentioned earlier. Um, well, we brought up a bunch of points that we've already mentioned today, but regardless, so we're talking about all this stuff. Wow, all right. Well, this is interesting because it's not often you can find. Oh, we were talking about the COVID and like the people during that time. And I was like, I said to him, I was like, the people who are even a few years younger than us, like that we've worked with throughout all the places we've worked now, like there is such a gap of communication with talking to them versus, the older people you work with or whatever,
Yeah,
customers and whatnot. So, we really started talking about that. And so, just started getting into a philosophical feeling today and I just was following it. And, then as we were wrapping up, I was, we were talked about music a bit. I was listening to music, and then, we were talking about, I don't know if we used the word originality, but we were talking about, the people who, change things in music in different ways, and that kind of is where this whole entire topic started in my head. And then I was thinking about my artwork as well, or like the music I like playing, and like how much of that is influenced, and yet again, is influence even a bad thing? Like we're naturally
yeah,
influenced, like you said,
yeah,
from the
dude.
start by everything we're around. Like we might enjoy living by the ocean because we grew up by the ocean. We might enjoy living in the woods because we grew. or vice versa. Whatever your experience is, if you have horrible experience living by the ocean, then you
Yeah,
might not
yeah.
want. So it's all. But yet again, that was an influence of some sort. There was some set of variables and circumstances that happened to you to then lead you to decide that said place is not for you or whatnot. So I guess it is.
Like the music front is where this thing is most obvious. Really, dude? Um, it's where it is the most obvious because I remember when I was in high school, back when tapes were, and then eventually CDs were only the only way to consume music outside of the radio. You'd have to go to a record store to buy these things or enroll in the Columbia Club, and it's a huge scam or whatever. People from my generation remember the Columbia Music House, um, but CDs and tapes. And I remember back in those days, even before that, I'm sure records and eight tracks, it was the same type of mentality. It was part of the mindset back then to find something original. Like you felt and you had bragging rights or you were special in some way if you could find like the most niche or the most original thing. But even though we couldn't define those terms, but back then it was kind of like you were finding the first for me it was hip hop. Like if you in the mid '90s, like early to mid '90s, well, really early '90s. That's when the Ghetto Boys really started getting big, and Rap a Lot Records flourished. And they a lot of artists came out of Rap a Lot out of Houston at the time, and so if you could find these like niche artists on Rap a Lot, you were special. Like, oh, I found this guy. Like, you don't have this dude, man. Check this album out, and people are like, oh, I've never heard these, and because you couldn't listen to the music the other way. Like you would
uh,
have to find the album. Like so you would be like a person carrying like something legit. Like you could
you could
introduce
be the
this
influencer.
right.
Yeah, yeah,
They wouldn't you wouldn't be able to just stumble into it where the
mm.
algorithm on Spotify
Yeah,
or
yeah,
YouTube or
yeah.
whatever would feed you.
Uh,
Like you would find this thing and so that was where this sense of like originality and
yeah,
specialness. But when you actually drilled into those artists though, they were all super influenced by other stuff. Like
yeah,
I would listen to those beats back then and think that like these dudes were like art master artists crafters and they were definitely great at producing beats. But as I've gotten older and started listening to music, on the streaming services, and the algorithms feed you other stuff, you start to hear like, no, those dudes were sampling even older stuff,
yeah,
which is what hip hop really is. But anyway, it's not in the dome anymore, buddy.
yeah,
But I understand where it
yeah, yeah,
comes
yeah,
from,
yeah,
though.
yeah.
So it
All right, well, that was a
was good.
good deep session there. So just the last few things wrapping up. This upcoming weekend, the 19th and 20th, Canal Fest Art Show. Tolner Art will be there with all of these lovely stickers. JDO Lure Co. will be there. JD Outdoors Co. will be there with art, lures, and much more. I guarantee none of you thought that you would ever hear Jimi Hendrix and Animal Sinew in the same sentence, but
Hmm.
now you have. And yeah, stay tuned for another great episode. Tight lines, and catch you guys later.
See ya.